My. It took us all the way to episode 3 to get all 3 of us together this season, guys.
Hey, hey, I tell you, it's been a rough one.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third edition of season 9 of Pastors Roundtable, and we are just excited to be here. I'm glad to be back in the saddle with my friends, Pastor Paul and Dr. Henry. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Man, it is good to have both of you in the lab. I'm calling this in the lab, but you know what we're saying, in the lab tonight. Just a good thing to have Dr. Henry and Pastor Wade. We exceptionally are excited about having each of you that are joining us tonight. And Dr. Henry, we're at the top. And there's something that we need the 12 folk that I see that have joined us now. There's something we need them to do, Doc. Oh, there might be something we need him to do. Hey, Doc, we're seeing that your feed is very, very slow right now, Dion. You might need to just log off and oh wait, now it's better, but we can't hear you. No, I can't hear you yet. we started, Raj. Remember, we started this, episode 1 like season 1.
Like this. It's episode 1. My Lord. Anyhow.
All right, Doc Henry, we still can't hear you, man. We got to figure out. Yep, go ahead, Raj.
Let me take his spot. Listen, if you're joining us tonight, there he is. There he is.
You can hear me?
Do your thing.
All right. Hey, listen, I don't know what's going on with the internet here. I'm in a different place, but guess what? We have a great program here tonight. You want to make sure that you share tonight. It's going to be beautiful. Listen, by the way, I see that we do have 15 people on. Let's just bump that number up to 30. We can do it. 30 in like 15 seconds. Let's do it.
All right. Absolutely. So real quick, guys, last week, let's do a little quick review of what went down last week on the PRT. If people are just joining tonight and they missed last week, Raj, what did they, or Dion, talk to us. What did they miss?
Yeah.
Because we missed Raj last week too.
Listen, last week we were just reviewing. We were reviewing some of the great episodes from season 1, 2, 3. I think we even went up to season 7, Pastor Paul, just talking about some of those episodes, and then also talking about some of the things that we want to do during this season. So go back to last week's episode, see what you missed. Good conversation, talking about COVID, and in the chat, man, they were responding. They were responding in the chat. That's what
Absolutely.
we wanted to do. Yeah, definitely. So that was what we did on last week.
Listen, Kimberly Russell, she knew what you were getting ready to do, Dion. She knew your job. She said you got to like it, got to share it, got to invite somebody to this thing. We want to shout out Patrick Williams is joining us tonight from Omaha, Nebraska. He is a member of the Omaha Sharon SDA Church. Oh, and he's giving us an invitation to join them tomorrow morning live for Sabbath School. That's what I'm talking about. All right. Good stuff. Listen, if you are joining us tonight, we do want to know where you're joining us from. So just throw that in the chat. Shout out your hometown, your church, your Sabbath School class, or whatever it is that you've got going on. We want to know that you have taken the time to join us tonight, and we appreciate you. And we are looking forward to this discussion tonight. And on that note, gentlemen, let's make that move. So, Roger, talk to us. What's on the table tonight, my friend?
On the table tonight, as you know, season 9 is peppered and flavored with all part 2s of Pastors Roundtable. We did a poll, and we saw what you would like for us to bring back to the table for us to dialogue. And so tonight, as you know, Pastors Roundtable was birthed out of a worldwide pandemic. And one of the topics we had was how to lead during a pandemic. Yeah. But now we want to pick up the conversation and ask the next question. How do you lead after the pandemic, the post-pandemic leadership model or style? And we brought with us, we have someone at the table who's going to help us share on that discussion.
Keep going, Raj. Talk to us. Who is at the table? We know that you probably know him best of the three
Oh
of us,
my,
and then
this.
Dion looks like he's still working with his stuff there. So, talk to us. Who is at the table for this discussion this evening?
Listen, listen, listen. I am just so excited. Matter of fact, um, Pastor Pastor James L. Black, who served as the youth director for the Southwest Region Conference way in the some time ago, and then was received a call to go to the North American Division to serve as the youth director there, youth and young adult director. And while he was doing his thing, he saw favor on your boy. That's all I can say. I
All
had a
right now.
privilege of sitting at his table, sitting at his feet, learning about ministry, youth ministry in particular. And then he did something that I just can't forget. And there was another leader who did it too. And this is in my life. They handed me leadership opportunities. I'm speaking none other than Danny Davis. The Pastor Danny Davis was the first one who did it. Pastor Black was the second one. So I am just excited to have a friend, a mentor, to be here with us at the table to share on post-pandemic leadership. Pastor James L. Black, who serves as the senior pastor of the Miami Bethany Seventh Adventist Church in Miami Gardens.
In
Miami,
Southeastern
Florida.
Conference. I need my Southeastern Conference crew to give us a shout out. Dr. Black, good evening, sir. Happy to have you on the Pastors Roundtable tonight.
I am honored to be here. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Look where I am.
What is-
You know, I'm telling my age now. I'm getting morning and evening. But the evening and the morning was the first
There
day.
you
But
go.
anyhow,
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. It's good to be here, guys.
Hey, good to have you. Listen, I know some of you have read the titling tonight, and we were expecting to have one other guest with us tonight. No stranger to the Pastors Roundtable, a Pastors Roundtable alum, Dr. Carlton Byrd. We got word just before our broadcast this evening that he lost power where he was. So, unfortunately, he's not going to be able to join us, or if he gets his power on before we finish, we may see him before we end this evening. But we are, again, excited and delighted to have Dr. Black with us tonight. And we're going to have a word of prayer. Then we're going to give Pastor Black just a few seconds to just give us a little overview. I know we did not read your full dossier, Elder, but our audience may just want to hear just a little bit about where you are, what you're doing before we hop into our questions tonight. But before we do that, I'm going to ask Dr. Henry if you would open us up with a word of prayer.
Let's pray. Father God, we thank you so much, Lord, for just allowing us to have this platform here tonight. We ask, God, that as we go through this topic, that we'll be edified, that you will instruct us, and that we can be effective evangelists for this time. Thank you for Dr. Black and his ministry. And we ask, God, again, that you be with us as we go on this live stream now. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
All right, Pastor Black. We typically will give each of our guests, particularly the pastors that we have on, we'll give you about 39.7 seconds to just address the audience, any shout outs that you want to do, and just give us an overview of where you are, what you're doing, what's new with you. Some of our audience may not have seen or heard from you in a long time. Just kind of bring us up to speed on where life has you, where Providence has you at this stage in your life and in your ministry.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for the opportunity once again. And I'm still amazed, considering where I am right now. I thought I was retired for 2 years and was enjoying retirement in Savannah, Georgia, my hometown. And, you know, while I was down there, my wife and I started doing some ministry in the city, and we did a Juneteenth program last year. And from that Juneteenth program in the community park, windows just opened up, doors opened up. We saw something we'd never seen before, and we started experimenting with revitalization. And in a few weeks, what God did, I thought it was there. It was the right vision, but the wrong venue. And I sent it to you, our conference president here in Southeast, and say, hey, what do you think about this? I was trying to get an opinion. And his thing was, man, we need this in my conference, and if you can come. And I was like, wow, okay, so hey, I am proud to be the proud pastor of the historic Miami Bethany Church here in Miami, Florida, and we are having we're having a wonderful time being back in the laboratory. Let me put it that way. So that's what we've been doing, and we're having a good time.
All right. Well, listen, I know our Southeastern family is happy to have you on board down here in the what would we say, in the logistics South. We're not necessarily culturally South, but we are the logistics South. Good to have you on board. Well, gentlemen, without any further ado, Dion, let's go ahead and get this thing started, man. You take us in.
Well, listen, hey, I got several things going on tonight. I was
See that.
just talking before. I was talking for our program. Some of our young people came back and they want to do something here on Friday night, so I'm kind of helping them and doing some stuff here, and also my commitment to the Pastors Roundtable is real, Pastor Wade. So,
Why you got to call me out? Why you got to call me out?
we're family. We're family. So, so let me start with this first question here. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Black, for being on our program here tonight. We really appreciate that. And so we're talking about post-pandemic leadership. Post-pandemic leadership. And we know things have changed since COVID. That's, given. And with this changing society, we have to be on the cutting edge, right? So to keep up. And so, just looking back, give us an overview of some of the challenges and opportunities that leaders face in this post-pandemic church and society. So, what are the opportunities and the challenges? Because we know that COVID has changed the landscape. So,
Yeah.
what are the opportunities, and also what are some of the challenges that we face as leaders?
Yeah. A very good question, and I'm so thankful that you guys have this platform. And just so that I can affirm you all, you've been blessing a lot of pastors. Your program is now a resource for us, and you don't know that until you get back in the saddle, and you don't have a lot of platforms like this out there. So kudos to what you're doing. But to jump right into the discussion, one of the things we have to do is, first of all, remember there was a pandemic. Okay.
Yeah.
Take,
Mercy.
take, take a minute to reflect where we were before the pandemic, how unprepared we were for the pandemic.
Mm.
Now come back to realize the pandemic is over. And with that in mind, what question do we start with? And when it comes to leadership, as we consider those questions I just posed, when it comes to leadership, there's a phrase that comes to mind that kind of centers me around this whole discussion, and that is the phrase "start over." You all have heard people talk about, when are we going to go back to normal, and we've had the discussion about what does normal mean. Let's pray God answers that prayer and not take us back to normal and all of that. And that's fun discussion, but what are we really saying? And I must confess to you guys that now that I've been pastoring for 3 months and 2 weeks, my answers are now different. So I've not had a whole lot of time to process, but I can tell you I probably would have answered the question differently now that I'm back in the seat.
Okay.
You see life totally different once you get back in the seat. And I'm a baby all over again now. I have to applaud my predecessor because I didn't lead a congregation through a pandemic.
Gotcha.
So whatever is in place or not in place, I just thank God he gave him strength to lead the congregation through the pandemic. Because as a leader, it's easy to come in and see what is not right.
Sure.
It's easy to come in and see what is broken. It's easy to come in and see what's what. And I intentionally, on purpose, remind myself often, I didn't take a congregation through a pandemic. I was at the North American division in a corporate office with a guaranteed budget in a comfortable position, traveling anywhere I wanted around the country whenever I wanted to.
Yeah.
So my whole reality was totally different. I was in a totally different space. And now you come, I don't want to say come back because I never left the pastorate. People ask me, well, how does it feel to be back? Well, I never stopped being a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I do come to the table with some sensitivity of knowing I don't look at what's not in place as a leader. I look at what does my gifts bring to the table, regardless of whether there was a pandemic or not.
Okay.
Because if I focus on what happened with the pandemic, I think we're gonna be carrying a bucket with holes in it. Okay, and everything we try to do, we're wondering why it won't hold water. Well, I don't have to process the pandemic because I wasn't here. So what I'm doing now, in terms of leadership, is I'm coming in saying, okay, what does my skill set bring to the table? As a leader, what does my experience bring to the table? And let me give you a little tidbit of what I used to do as a consultant when I was having fun doing that for a while with pastors. I would ask a church for, if I was going to consult with a pastor, and honestly, I'm still consulting with pastors of all denominations, about 75 now actually, and I would ask, send me the last 12 months of your church board minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And send me the last 12 months of your church monthly finance report. And you put, I'm sorry, not the minutes, the agendas, the last 12 months agendas and the financial report. And you'll find that the two go hand in hand. I can look at the agenda and tell pretty much where that church is in terms of its focus and its direction.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I remember doing the George Ford situation, and the chaos was happening in Seattle, you'll remember. And there was a pastor in the Seattle area that came on Facebook, and he was blasting everybody and all this kind of thing and so forth. And I made a comment that I won't make here tonight. And so he reached out to me and said, well, hey, I need you to kind of expound on what you were saying. Well, first of all, I don't have to expound on nothing. My words are clear. But he said, well, I'm in a church here in Seattle where, we're thriving and we're doing well. And so I said, well, do me a favor, if you would, please. You don't have to, but just as part of the discussion, send me the agenda of your last 12 months board meeting. He sent the agenda, and it was so what I expected. I didn't even bother to reply because it wouldn't have been a kind conversation. Because what people think is my church is doing it, so while all this stuff is happening in the streets, we're already making an impact. And you look at the church board agenda, and we are not even on the agenda as a church in the community, right? And so when you put all that together and bring it to the table, I have to now assess myself as a leader that even with my skill set, and I'm gonna give you an example in just a minute, that even with my skill set, I've got to slow down and say, okay, let me make sure I understand what's going on here. I can't go back to the pandemic because I have no reference point as a pastor leading a congregation through a pandemic. So let me understand where these folk are now, where my skill sets are right now, and how I can merge the two of those as a leader to springboard us forward. And let me give you one example. The first thing I did when I got here to Bethany as a leader, because people were like, man, we can't believe all the black is here. And I appreciate, I'm humble about all those kind remarks. But we got a great leader. He's been here and there and so forth. And you hear all of these accolades and what have you. And I'm humble about all of them. But, I get here and I'm like, wait a minute, all that means nothing. I'm in a congregation and I had a chance to watch. I didn't know where I was coming before I was asked to go to Bethany, so I knew I was coming to South Florida. I watched all the churches in South Florida through live streaming because I didn't know where I was going. My point is, once I got here, I realized I came in with all these big ideas, and here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it, and I had to slow down immediately. And I said, God, how do I approach this thing? What's the first thing on my agenda? So guys, check this out. My very first official meeting with the church was not with the elders. It was not with the church board. It was a church business meeting. And there was only one item on the agenda. And can you guess what that was?
Tell us, Doc.
One item on the agenda, and it says, listen, listen. So my first official business meeting with the church for about 2 or 3 hours, I sat and I listened.
Wow.
I can tell you now, 15 weeks later, that's the best thing I ever did in my ministry.
Wow.
Because
That's
what
huge.
that did, that legitimized the laboratory. And it says we will be able to test some things. But now I know what to test because I'm listening to the people. And they had never had that opportunity before. And so as pastors, post-pandemic, let's slow down and let's go back and revisit the term start over. That's a beautiful space. There's nothing wrong with that. I think sometimes we approach things from a negative standpoint. I'm speaking in terms of something positive because once we start over, I can build that out a little later on with some other things I need to share. But that's pretty much a kind of an intro in terms of my mind. What I bring to the table as leadership is just taking that pause to assess. And by the way, you don't have to be new to do that. It has nothing to do with being a new pastor. It's pretty much anybody can take that position and have a starting point.
Wow, that's good. That's good. You know, that's just such a huge part, I think, of any leadership, whether it's pastoring or anything else, the idea of being able to listen and to ascertain what is the current situation rather than coming in and wanting to just kind of you think you know what the situation is or know what needs to be done. So that's huge. Listen and start over. Listen and start over. Good stuff. So I'm wondering, Doc Henry, I'm wondering if we should bring Pastor Black into our little debate on last week.
Uh,
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go.
you got me on. There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Yes. Listen, last week we were talking about the pandemic, and we mentioned that post pandemic, do the preachers preach differently? Do you preach differently post pandemic than you did during the pandemic? I think we mentioned that. So
wow.
That was one aspect, but we got some more.
that's
But
one
go
aspect.
ahead, let them weigh in on that.
Yeah. Wow, that's loaded. I'm going to be strict with you on this. Oh my goodness. Anytime you understand what the word pandemic means, we went through a world-changing event. There are still people who are still struggling with PTSD in our pews every Sabbath. And I think what needs to happen is that prior to the pandemic, I think we were more or less focused on preaching to the intellect,
Okay.
preaching to the mind. We are pastoring a wounded, a post-pandemic wounded congregation.
Hmm.
Everybody has lost somebody.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if every sermon now has to have some part of a eulogy in it because the pain won't go
Mercy.
away.
Wow.
And so what I have chosen to do, if you go on my web, on our YouTube page now, and look at all the sermons I have preached, everything has been strategic. I am now preaching to the heart. I could care less about what you think about the intellectual scope of my message. I could care less about how homiletically sound you may think it is or not. I'm looking in the eyes of people. We lost 3 elders, and we have an aging church. 3 elders in December. This is post-pandemic. We lost 3 elders in the month of December.
Wow. Wow.
People are wounded. Every board member has somebody they've lost. There are now widows that are only 6 months fresh. Widowers,
Yeah.
9 months fresh. And so my preaching now is intentional in terms of preaching to the heart. And how you want to define that, that's up to you. But I tell you one thing, when you preach to the heart, man, it's meaningful to people because that applies healing. Okay, I'm doing my second series tomorrow. Last week I started Jesus Christ the Entertainer. part two is tomorrow, and it's all about hope, and it's about, you know, God being on a stage, and this whole world is a drama between good and evil, and we say we know how it ends, but what transpires between the beginning and the end? Man, people are sitting back going, wow. And so we'll get to this a little later as well. So who I'm preaching to also impacts how I'm preaching.
Mm,
Okay.
mm,
And let me hit you with this. Pastor Henry, you've got young adults at your church tonight. I am so thankful that because of the approach that I'm taking, all three of my young adult children, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. All three of my young adult children, who are two in their late 30s now, my son is 41, they're all in church every Sabbath morning.
Yeah. Wow.
Why?
Hey.
And my son said it best. He said, Dad, he said, something is different about you. Something is different.
Ah.
Why? Why? And I hope you're holding your seatbelts for this, because my pandemic took place in 2016 when I had the bone marrow transplant.
Yeah.
My pandemic took place 3 years ago when I had the stroke. So
mm.
so 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 my PTSD and what I've gone through, I'm also preaching to myself.
Yeah.
And so with the debate about what we bring to the table in terms of preaching, make certain that we're being healed in the same process.
That's good. That's good. That's good. That's real good. Powerful stuff, Doc. Listen, let's shift that question just a little bit, from preaching in the pandemic to how we do church post pandemic. And that was also a juicy part of our going back and forth last week. And I'll give you, I don't know if I'm going to be leading the witness, Dion, but it was like there was frustration, I think, on my part of, I felt like, so Dr. Henry was saying that we have, you know, the pandemic was good because it's moved us out of some places that we were prior to the pandemic, and preaching was a part of that. You know, the preaching is different, and yet I was feeling a little frustrated because I look around at my own church and in other churches, and to me, it feels like while we were in the pandemic, we were saying, yeah, stuff is no longer normal, and it's moved us, I think, into a place where we thought we needed to go anyway. But the pandemic has forced us to try to make some changes that were more relevant, that were more real, like the kind of preaching that you just talked about. And yet it feels like that since the pandemic is over, for me, it's felt like people have said, phew, glad that was over. And it was more of an interruption than a disruption. That we have kind of gone back in many cases and in many ways back to normal. What's your take on that? What are you seeing? Are you seeing that there has been as much progress that we thought at one point that the pandemic would afford us? Are we slipping back into the pre-pandemic normal? What's your assessment of what you see around the country?
I lean towards the latter. I think initially there was talk about where we go from here and the whole not going back to normal, but we have slipped right back into being good old Adventist.
Mm.
Okay. And you know, I say that intentionally because I'm trying my best to become a Christian disciple. And I'm trying to lead a congregation to become the same. I think we had a problem with that pre-pandemic. And so coming out of this thing, when I got to Bethany, coming to Bethany, well, let me put it this way. Walking the streets of Savannah, Georgia for almost 18 months, a little less than 2 years, I saw the streets were even different than what they were, you know, back in my days. It's a different place. But here's the thing. When I went to those streets, I realized, wow, the streets are an opportunity all over again. And the church is only 2 blocks down from the park, but the people at the park don't know the church. Okay. And so Juneteenth came and there's a program and they don't know the people's name at the park. And so I think what has happened now is, for me, now when I say on the streets, guys, I'm talking about among crack addicted folk at least 3 times a week in the streets, on the park. Everybody knows Pastor Black. at the
Yeah.
37th Street Wells Park in Savannah, Georgia. Here's my point. So I had time to process this, and when I realized I was coming back into the pastorate, my thing was how am I going to change? Now we're talking about leadership, okay? You asked a question about the church, but how am I going to change?
Okay.
Well, on the day of my installation, I called the president to give him heads up on something because I didn't want him to be surprised. I said, Mr. President, he didn't answer me. I sent him a text, and he got it. We laughed later. I said, I just want to warn you that I will be installed with jeans on,
Okay.
jeans and sneakers. All right. I did that on purpose because I wanted to make a statement going in. You will not take me back to anything that's been traditional, anything. No, I've already changed. And so I think I've in 3.5 months, I've had a suit on twice. And I only did that to let them know I have a suit. I have suits. Okay. But the point is, here's the thing. Coming into the church, this is serious. When I looked at the Brownsville community where the church is located, okay, I look at all the people around there, and I look at how we dress coming in church. Man, ain't nobody coming up in there. Why? Because they can't compete with us. We're wearing formal wear into church, and so the appearance of what we present before we get to how we have church is already a turnoff. So we can't even present the mission because people feel they can't compete with us. And so wearing jeans and standing up every Sabbath now with a polo shirt and so forth, which I'll probably wear tomorrow again with some Dockers and sneakers, folk go, okay, this is okay. The Holy
Hmm.
Spirit is still with him. Okay. He's not less Holy Ghost filled because of what he's wearing. All right. And then from there, that has changed the whole vibes. Guess what, man? I've got 80-year-olds, 80-year-old men in particular, coming to church now with the regular shirt and the collar unbuttoned and so forth, and they're teaching Sabbath, and I'm laughing my head off because one of them gave me a hard time. He didn't give me a hard time. He said something to somebody else, and now last week he had a polo shirt. He had a polo shirt on, and I noticed they take their vibe from the leader. So how we're having worship now is very engaging because we had to first of all put a mission statement together and all of that, but now we're truly connecting with the community, and I'll share some ideas in terms of how that is happening. But I think in terms of how we do worship and how we do church, I know at Bethany is already happening. The
It's
only
in motion.
caution I
Good.
have, the only caution I would suggest, and I'm experiencing this right now, I'm having to back up just a little bit because, and I don't mean this in an egotistical way, there's so much in my head and in my experience, I have to be careful. Okay. And I caught myself and I said, I think I need to ease up just a little bit because I have a beautiful edifice. My predecessor did a great job. I don't have to paint anything. His gifts provided all of that. We can come and worship debt free.
Oh, bless the
Okay.
Lord.
So the only caution that I have is that we have the freedom to worship now, and it's on fire every Sabbath. I can't wait to get to the pulpit. It's going to burn every Sabbath, but I have to pace my people or I'll burn them out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good counsel. Good counsel.
Pastor Black. I as you were sharing, you talked a lot about the fact that the pandemic opens up this new opportunity for churches to worship differently, to minister differently. But you and I have to put myself in that now, we're old enough to know there was a time when, um, you know, that quote unquote was the norm in terms of what you're saying about how we should be. I want to believe is how we were. Back when we did MV, or when we were really involved in the community, or really involved, where the individual was important. What happened, or did it have to take a pandemic to make that adjustment to get us back to looking at ministry differently?
In my opinion, absolutely. Um, um, I mean, let's go to Revelation. I know thy works.
Mm.
Okay. God was not ignorant of the fact of where we were in this world prior to the pandemic. And I think in some ways the pandemic was good in that it forced us to go to a different place. I don't know about you, but man, when folk were dropping dead around me, my prayers were a little bit different, you know, because you didn't know. We all had to be careful because we didn't know if we would be next or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about that, guys. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
we didn't know who were next, and we were
Yeah.
all praying for people that we can call names of right now who are no longer here, and we are surprised they were next. So
Mm-hmm.
it was mind boggling, and so yeah. I mean, I think that the pandemic was good in that it took us to a different place, but I'm not convinced that we embraced all we could have learned from the pandemic. You know,
Yeah.
I think the discussions are good, but in terms of what we practice and what we see, um, let me give you a good example. In most conferences right now, what is the number one method for evangelism? A
To do
meeting,
it.
an evangelistic meeting.
Gonna
Mm-hmm.
do a 2-3 week series
Yep,
in a
2 or 3
church or in
series,
in a building.
and you're gonna
Doctrine,
sweat,
doctrine, doctrine,
and
doctrine. Yep.
you're gonna beat your people over the head for not bringing visitors and all that and so forth. But
Quiz man.
all the other opportunities that are facing us that we could be exploring with, you can't get funding for that because it's not part of that norm. And the norm
Mm.
has been, here's how we do evangelism: it's meeting, quote unquote, meeting centered,
Yeah.
okay, not ministry centered. And so as a result of that, in terms of whether it was before the pandemic or after the pandemic, here's what we're producing. We're put okay. Don't y'all take my title. I'm preaching in about 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I'm preaching a message entitled "Three Reasons Why I Don't Want to Be a Church Member Anymore."
Mm.
Mm.
Now, I can't give you the punchline in terms of why, but it goes to answer part of that question. We have become too content as a membership,
Mm-hmm.
and see, I don't think the pandemic has done much to change that, because I'm not worried about going back to normal. We got to change our mindset in terms of where does discipleship fit into this thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we produce, as leaders, we produce great. I don't say great members. We produce members, but members who have no clue of what discipleship is. And so, Roger, whether it was post-pandemic, I mean pre-pandemic or post, I don't see any change in that. I think we've kind of settled back in to, okay,
Mm.
well, my meeting is this fall in October, such and so forth. And I wish we had, as a church, kind of experimented a little bit more with other, given we just came out of this experience and we had to become very creative to keep the church alive. And then once we got back in person, no matter how small it was or large it was, we kind of said, okay, we're here now. Phew, boy, that was rough. And we went back to normal. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So, before we move on, let's ask. Marilyn Gerald asked a question. Pastor Black, you mentioned that you had to pull back lest you burn your people out. She wanted to know for you to expand on that a little bit more. What are you meaning by you had to pull back so that your members won't burn out?
Yeah. Um, I think what it is,
Mhm.
I had to, and I have good conversation with the former pastor of my friend. And as I'm having conversation with him, I see how I see how his gifts blessed the church over a 5-year period. Okay, so I have now come into an experience where, I mean, for 5 years he took the church through a pandemic, a major building renovation program, raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to make it happen, and left the church debt free.
Mm.
So now I come in not having to paint anything, and so I've got a la carte in terms of opportunity,
Mhm.
right? And so somebody, oh, Pastor Black is being very, no. I'm not that much better than the previous guy. His focus was on, we got to we got to get this ship paint off this stuff. We got to get these galvanized pipes out of here. He did that successfully. And so now I'm coming in with my skill set, and I'm
Mhm.
ready to go, and I'm ready to push it. And what happens is, because we are revitalizing with only a church that seats over 500 and some people, and you get there to only 50 to 60 coming per Sabbath, I'm trying to revitalize, but what that meant was the nucleus was even smaller.
Right.
Mm.
So you only had 20, 25 people that was doing everything, and I noticed I was burning them out real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I realized, wait a minute, let me back up. Another example was I said, well, what's our Bible study program in terms of studying with people? I ordered 100 sets of In His Steps Bible studies, and I get before the church, our Bible studies have arrived, and we're going to do this, that, and other, and so forth. And I think we got 15 people signed up, and I'm wondering what's wrong with these people. Why? And then my first elder said, Pastor, we've not had any discipleship training in a while.
Mm.
And I was like, wow. I'm coming in status quo. Here's what you should be doing. And their thing is,
How do
we
we
got
do
folks
that?
who've never given a Bible study. And so I've got to start over once again, pull back, reassess, and go, okay, let me show you how to give an effective Bible study. Right?
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared for that step, and I missed it completely. And so, but it's okay. I'm regrouping, and I'm starting over, and I'm doing that. So that's what I meant by I had to kind of pull back a little bit because I was pushing too fast, just trying to get it done. Okay, and that's what I meant by pulling back a little bit.
Gotcha.
Good.
Okay.
Good. Elder, when we talk about this transition from pandemic to post pandemic, one of the things that a lot of us found ourselves trying to catch up with was finding ourselves in the virtual space or becoming relevant in the virtual space. And so a lot of our churches were having to figure out, how do we continue to worship when our churches are closed? So a lot of churches went out and bought cameras and had to figure out how to stream and how to work audio and do all the digital stuff to have a presence in the digital space, in the virtual space. You've got 3 billion people on YouTube every day, 2 billion something on Facebook every day. And so those are the places. And we started hearing phrases and doing and saying things like, we got to fish where the fish are. And so we started being intentional, probably about 15, 20 years behind everybody else, about having a footprint in that space. Now, post pandemic, what is that hybrid reality like? So that reality of in-person versus online worship services, has that impacted, or how has that impacted the way leaders are thinking in a post-pandemic world?
The good thing about a very good question. The good thing about this is we created a problem for all of the previous televangelists
Mm.
Mm.
because TD Jakes is no longer the only show in town.
Mm.
Okay. You guy in Houston, I can't think of the name.
Joel Osteen.
Joel Osteen.
Osteen. Go down the list.
Mm-hmm.
They are no longer the only show in town.
Mm.
And
Okay.
we have created, Christianity as a whole has created a problem for them.
Okay.
Because now they don't get all the wealth anymore.
Okay.
Okay. They don't get all the offerings anymore. People finally they got options. And if you think about it, a lot of churches did well during the pandemic. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because they discovered us on television, quote unquote, is social media, but they discovered us. And they're sitting here and now offering time. Oh yeah, I can do that. And they learn how to CashApp and you got old folks yelling and CashApp and having and so forth. They never would have done that if that experience hasn't forced them to do that. So I think that's been a good part of this thing, is that it gave us a platform some of us never ever would have had, knowing we should have gone there, but we just never did it. But here's what I want to say about that. One of the advantages of the hybrid is this. I think we overplay sometimes the two and the differences between the two. I think the blessing here is, let me just share with you how I'm approaching it now. Because I was one of the, I don't want to say popular, but I was one of the frequent speakers in a lot of places around the world during that time. Okay, and so now I come to a local church and I see myself and I see what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, now I'm just here. I'm not someplace different every Sabbath. I can't leave here. I'm here again next Sabbath. By the way,
Mm-hmm.
that was one of the reality checks I had after I was introduced. After a couple of weeks, I was like, "Oh, wait a minute, I got prayer meeting."
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It just was a loop for me, right? That was. But I mean, one day I got prayer every Wednesday night, right? But here's the thing: our social media at Bethany is growing, and I thank God for what is happening. He's just blessing. The branding is changing. It has changed, and we thank God for that. But here's how I, as a leader, here's how I approach the hybrid. I don't compare my in person with online.
Okay.
We're just one congregation, one congregation, and so you'll notice if you go and watch any of my past videos, and I'm gonna do it tomorrow as well because I'm strategic about it. At some point, I'm intentionally talking to my online audience. Why? Because they are in church with me.
Okay.
Okay.
They're in church. I don't treat my preaching as if I'm in person and people are sitting for me in person. I treat my preaching every Sabbath that I have a worldwide audience.
Okay.
And that has helped me tremendously. So really, there's not a whole lot to compare for me because I just have a one approach that we're just one congregation. And here are people who are coming from around the world who wants to listen, guys. I'm having a baptism next month from people who live in other states that are coming to Miami to be baptized.
All right.
Good.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
I received an offering from Germany for our breakfast. And I don't know if you all know, but we feed our community breakfast. We were doing it every Sabbath, and I had to pull back once again. We're doing the first and third. We do from 9 to 10:30 every first and third Sabbath. We cook a hot breakfast for our community,
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
and it's going crazy. Um, um, for the month of May, we probably collected over $15,000 in donations for breakfast.
Mm.
Wow.
That's coming from the one congregation. Now, most of that coming from
Okay.
online, and but because again, I don't see these people, right? But my approach is one congregation. I'm preaching one message. Yes, there are people in church, but there are people online, and I'm speaking one message to everybody. So that what has helped me with the hybrid is not processing one over the other, but treating them as one congregation, one audience, and I'm speaking to them all.
Wow. That's good. That's good. So one more on this thing. Is there any value, or are you seeing things happen in the virtual space, in this hybrid space, besides churches doing anything or leaders leading in any directions that have content in the virtual space besides just a worship service? What are you
Yeah,
seeing in that space?
man, you are spot on with that question. It's I'm already working on that for Bethany.
Okay.
Because I look. Let me just deal with the last 3 months, okay? I go to our YouTube page, and I've got these beautiful graphics of my sermon titles and so forth, but that's it.
Mm.
I don't have. I don't come on. I don't come on and say, "Hey, hi," or "Hey, I'm walking the streets of Brownsville today, and I'm just out here just seeing what's going on, or whatever." Today, I'm sitting here with Mrs. Brown, and Mrs. Brown, tell us your story.
Yeah.
But see, we I think once again we get so straitjacket in
Mm.
terms of one
Mm.
thing, and understand this is social media. Go to TikTok, go to these other platforms, and you'll see what we're talking about. We're not talking about a 45-minute something.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
woke up, I woke up this morning with a thought on my mind. Well, post that on your YouTube. But you know, and I'm not talking about something every day because I like to be kind of spontaneous, you know, and I don't want to create another program. But
Hmm.
every now and then, if you look at my Facebook page, I'm very strategic in how I don't post a whole lot. But when I post something, I hope it's significant, right?
Mm.
And so I would say the same about the technology, and what we have here is that we become one-sided, and you're spot on with that. And so all we're seeing is just a worship service, and YouTube is bigger than that, man. We don't encourage people to like, share and subscribe. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, again, why? Because we're not doing it frequently enough. All right,
Mm.
have some fun with the church, and that, let me just say, have some fun with the thing. It's social media, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's to that point.
So, Elder Black, I mean, you and I have been through a number of opportunities to impact lives of young people and adults and throughout. And we actually saw leaders that came through, and we realized that there were all sorts of leaders. But in this post-pandemic, you yourself had to kind of take on a different concept in terms of leadership. What type of leader or leadership is really needed today? There is a dearth in the church. The church leadership is even saying there's a component that's missing in terms of where leaders are. We talk about the fact that pastors, we don't have enough people graduating, being trained to be pastors. What type of leader or leadership is really
Wow.
needed today?
You know, I don't mean this in a cliche way, but we have lost our center.
Hmm.
Um, when we talk about the lack of theology majors and young people going into ministry, there was a time when young people looked at us, or I looked at my pastors, and I didn't so much want like be what they were at the time, but I knew they were successful men.
Hmm.
Now it's men,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be like that. And so I think we've lost our center in
Mm,
terms of definition of what it is we are.
mhm,
Hmm.
mhm,
And I think that's become confusing. And
mm.
until we rediscover that definition, because if you ask all of us, we all have different opinions. We don't have a center point
Right.
Hmm.
in terms of what it is and I didn't want to say this tonight, but let me say it this way. When I say start over, sometimes it also means our theology, our methodology, and everything. When you look at the training that we all got, undergrad and graduate,
Hmm.
and I say this very respectfully to a lot of godly men who trained us, um, but think about who taught you, and ask yourself the question: how successful were they as a pastor?
Mm. Okay.
What
Okay.
was their track record as a successful pastor?
Mm.
And yet, I'm sitting in a class for a whole quarter at that time, both Oakwood and Andrews quarter system. Now I think a semester, and I'm thinking, what right do you have to even teach me? What can you tell me in terms of being a practitioner? So here's where I come to, Roger. That word practitioner. And when you see a doctor, you know a doctor, a medical doctor in particular, a medical doctor is a medical doctor. And a medical doctor is respected for his craft, and we trust him with our lives.
Mm.
You can be a pastor and have a doctor in front of your name, it don't mean squat.
Hmm.
Wow.
Wow.
And so young people look at that and go, okay, well, what does it mean?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
you know, we struggle. They now listen, they kind of know our business. All right. And so in this post-pandemic time we're in now, my point is we need to ask God to bring us back to a center. And that center, it starts with our stakeholders in terms of who hires us as leaders and administrators. I think they have to have an honest conversation among themselves, even before they can even begin to have a conversation with pastors, and talk about where it is what is the center point for us now. Because I want to be very
Mm.
honest with you. That's one of the weaknesses I see now coming into the. I hear a lot of great things, but I'm trying to find out where's the center. I hear a lot of stuff, but where's the center? Where's that point? Because I
Yeah.
think it's over here, and the moment I think it's over here, that goalpost moves. I think coming back to the center is what we need to define, and that's what I think is required, and then we can kind of redefine where it is we go from there.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
that's actually a great segue into this next question, um, because the next question is really asking, what is that center? When you've got, so much in this post-pandemic world, you've got all this social media, you got a lot of tech-driven stuff, you've got alternative facts, in this very polarized world that we're living in. And sometimes, we look at, as church members, we look out, and at least in the United States, we look out and see such a polarized political segment of society. But the church is becoming just as polarized. You got all of our issues, worship issues, ordination issue, all of those things. Um, and you see spokespersons, people who will take up the charge and lead this way and go this way and this way. Is there a central, what is that focus, that central thing that you think that we should be doing as leaders, as church leaders in this post-pandemic world?
I am so excited about that question because, again, we've said a lot of things tonight, and so it boils down to this question. So what is it that can be done to get us to that center? And one of the things that let me give you a comparison real quick. I worked as a local pastor of the Stockman Ministry, very short pastorate, then went into the conference office very early as a young adult, and was in that position for 10 years, then went to North American Division. And I see the differences in terms of what it's like to be an employee on multiple levels.
Got it.
As a pastor, the only budget you have is what comes in through that local church. You go to the conference office, you get a little bit, more budget, do a little bit of things depending on once the bills are paid, and then you got a little something left as a departmental person. But when I got to the North American Division, it was interesting. I had
Tell it all, Elder. Tell it all.
Without telling too much. From day one, at the beginning of the year, I had everything I needed. Now, of course, it's appropriated out over the year, but the point is, I felt positioned for success. I felt I had what I needed in order to do my job effectively. Okay,
right.
And part of that was personal and professional growth, and I had a budget to make that happen. Why am I saying this? Why am I saying this? Because one of the things I think we need to do in terms of post-pandemic leadership right now is that we need to pause, reevaluate, and then reinvest in our pastors. What do I mean by reinvest? I'm talking about reinvesting beyond the salary.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. See, let's have a conversation beyond the salary.
Open that up, Doc. Yeah.
I'm in a conference, and there's certain expectations, and this is across the board. There's certain expectations of me as a pastor, and we're having workers meeting, and we're having great conversations, and I'm glad to be a part of a conference where I think, as I've been here, I kind of have an idea where we're going, because leadership can articulate a vision, and I'm listening. Fill us, and it's been consistent, and I'm working with that, so I feel it, and I can work with that. But at the same time, I need to be just as clear in terms of how are you going to invest in me in terms of my personal and professional growth to make me a better leader. Now, with all due respect, I'm talking beyond Pelk.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Now don't get me wrong. I know somebody gonna take that the wrong way. Okay. That's not what I'm talking about, guys. I enjoy Pelk, and it has purpose and needs no explanation. But I'm talking about, and so you're very good in technology, Roger. I know your space, and Doc Henry wouldn't be here if he didn't have some experience with this space. but I need to be able to articulate in this area just as well as you guys.
Mm. Yeah.
But where do I get that experience? I remember going to Las Vegas for my first technology convention, and that's when they had MySpace. You know, yeah,
Yes,
MySpace and some
yes.
of Earth and all of that. But the point I'm making is, I came out loaded.
Hmm. Hmm.
I came out filled and loaded because I got exposed to something.
Mm-hmm.
And Roger, you could have brought anything to me in terms of a budget for programming, but you couldn't do it. Why? Because I knew just as much as you knew.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, that's a big word I just used. Reinvest. That's the only way we're going to get there. Reinvest beyond the salary. That's just a starting point. But that's my take on that.
So Elder, let me I'm going to try to push you to say a little more on that, because we've got an audience tonight, probably largely of laypersons, who
Yes.
feel that everything that you just said was aimed and geared towards conference level administrators and conference level funding and decision making. Is there any of that that you just described that can be inspired, motivated, facilitated at the local level?
Oh yeah, no. When I was speaking, I'm talking about the church. Period.
Uh-huh.
I use example with leadership. The same thing. I've gotten leaders. And again, not everything requires getting on a plane and flying across country. Okay,
Hmm.
researching what's happening locally. Okay, and being a part of that. There's a lot of quote unquote free stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but what we have to do is open up ourselves to be available to take the advantage of that. That's pouring in as well. Sometimes pouring in and reinvesting means information.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Okay, and so again, because what good does it do me if only I know it?
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Right.
so my elders, I want my elders to be equipped
Hmm.
to know
Hmm.
just as much as I know,
Right.
because then what happens is, see, as a church, in terms of leadership, be it pastor, whatever level, down to the last pew, we are not good at making duplicates of ourselves.
Talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, I have a gift, but I'm going to protect it. I'm going to hold it close to my chest.
Yeah.
My Lord.
No, man, take that gift, and
Duplicate it.
we're taking an approach at Bethany where I've said, let me give you an exact example. I've got a new women's ministries leader who's excited, and I'm coming in talking bold. I think I kind of scared her a little bit, but I'm like, no, sis, I'm coming working alongside you, and I shared some ideas with her, and she got really excited. And I said, we're going to call a meeting with all the women after church one Sabbath, and then we're just going to tell them where we're going. But she says, but Pastor, I need help. I said, well, guess what? You're going to have a lot of help, but guess what? Because I'm going to ask every woman in the church to be your assistant.
Okay.
Why?
Okay.
Because that's where the multiple gifts are.
Hmm. Hmm.
You are one person. And if you're one person, you're going to burn out and you won't last long. But if you depend on the congregation of women to be your assistant, they all come alongside you. And now it's not just me or you, it's us.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And so I'm hitting every level in terms of what I mean by pouring in and equipping and so forth. It's everybody, but making duplicates of ourselves as leaders and not keeping it to ourselves, but sharing it with people, and then seeing the confidence resurrect.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, I can do this. And so yeah, that's what
It's let me
Listen,
ask you a little bit more
one
directly the
minute, one
question. Hold
minute,
on, hold
Malcolm.
hold
I
hold
think
hold on, Raj. Let me
no.
because I want to make sure that this answer this question finishes. As far as the role of the local church, can the local church play a role in helping to equip their pastor? They say, okay, he needs this. Okay, maybe we can't create a PELC or we can't do this, but are there other things that the local church the role that they can play in making sure that their pastor is invested in at that level?
I think that's up to if the pastor is open to that.
Mhm.
I think sometimes the challenge is there are pastors who don't believe that the church can do that.
Like, I'm good. Yeah, y'all
But,
don't need to
but
mess with me. I'm fine.
no, but I think
Yeah.
I think it's more than that. I think it's
Yeah.
the church themselves giving the pastor permission to invest in themselves, because that's one thing. Why the pastor's not here, or why the elders are
Mm,
going to a retreat. I think we need,
mm.
because we have a large lay leaders on this call right here tonight. Pastor Black, speak to how can a church help invest in a pastor, because I think that's
Okay.
what they need to hear,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
they think we're with the conference, and the conference is taking care of
That's
all
the
of that.
conference's
Well,
job. That's the, yeah.
well, Roger, here's what I did. Okay, and you know where this page comes from. Okay,
Yes.
I told you all the first thing I did when I got to the church was the first thing on the agenda was listen.
Listen.
We went from listening to uh, our first leadership summit as a congregation.
Hmm.
We didn't call it leadership summit. We call it reality summit.
Mm,
It
mm.
was our very first in the history of the church since 1963, and it was 9 to 5.
Oh,
Folks showed up 9. We had breakfast. We went from 9 to 5. There were local pastors in our district that showed up. I can call their name, 3
oh,
of them.
on a
They stayed
Sabbath?
on Sabbath. They stayed all day. They
Nice.
were there at the benediction, right? Because what they're trying to do, they're like, man, we like this and we want to model in our church. And so what I'm doing is not just for us, but I'm saying, see, let me back up just for a
I
second.
love that.
See, we're messed up because the local congregation thought that the conference assigned us to their church. And I made
Mm.
it very clear during
Come
my
on.
installation that I didn't God does not call us to the church, he calls us to the city.
Yes.
Come on. Yes.
So Bethany, you only get part of me.
Got to throw that back
And
in
the
there.
community gets the rest of me. Okay? So now we're all in it together. And so
Hmm.
that leadership training, we went from I can send you guys the agenda. We went from A to Z. I had 8 speakers, 6 of them were virtual, smashed it. It worked. I want to show how the dynamics were. It was amazing. And so we educated, and so now everyone understands the need because they know what we're void of. Because sometimes folk are innocent and they're hearing us say all kinds of stuff and don't know how to define that thing. But I think the local church is very open once they understand and change our mindset that no, this pastor understands he came to our city and
Hmm.
not just us. So now I need you to come with me to your community. And I'm gonna tell you, man, it's working for us right now. It's
Praise
working.
God. Praise
It's
God.
working.
Love that
Wow.
concept. Love that idea. I'm tucking that one away, Doc.
So
9 to
someone
5.
asked a question. Someone asked a question about I think it was Kimberly, I think, asked a question about continuing education. I know the church went into this big, and now that you're back in the local platform, in the local Pastor Black, I know the conference or the division, they do ask, there is a continuing education for ministers. Is that something, other than what you did or what you bring to the table, is that something that's working?
Yeah, there's the whole, what is it called? There's the whole something community, the learning community that is for all of
Yeah,
the church
it,
employees,
it, it,
etc.
Hey,
it's called
ACL, Adventist
called
AL.
Adventist Learning Community.
Yeah, Advanced Learning Community.
it's
Listen,
called the Adventist.
Rodney Smith says we got to stop throwing softball. So that's a
Yeah,
hard one.
y'all trying to get me in trouble here tonight. You know, so Rod, you think you slick, all right? But anyhow,
Right?
but see, here's the thing, guys. Here's the thing. When we were talking earlier about what impacts our preaching and whether it's different now post pandemic, here's what has changed for me, and that is I don't have time for the crap anymore.
Come on.
I ain't got time for it. Okay, I almost died twice, and so with this second chance I got, I can't mess this up, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm not gonna play with anything in terms of wasting my time just going through something unless I'm actually forced to do it or my employment is at risk. And I look at the stuff and I'm going, okay, and I don't want to go too far with this, but the point I'm making is it's got to be real, it's got to be relevant, it's got to be practical.
Come on.
Or
Sound like you were working for Pastors Roundtable there.
Relevant resource to real.
Or what is it I'm bringing back to the congregation? Okay, and many times I think we're missing the mark on that. So you can do the check off listing if you want, that's fine, but what? Listen, when I did youth ministry, I've written 24 books and resources. Okay, whenever I produced a resource, I produce it in mind. I produce it with this in mind. Don't write a manual for them to understand the book you're writing.
Come on.
If the thing is so complex, my thought was, I'm going to write something you can use next Sabbath on your own.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost that in terms of the training aspect and whether it's earning credits for it or whatever. We just need to get into a place where we've got information and studied information and data and cutting edge information that we can take and embrace and say, this works, and I will recommend this. I'll pass it on because I grew from this. Okay, we had a program at our church. Oh my goodness. And I asked my elder, how was it? I'm getting in trouble, and quoting her because I'm evaluating, and her words was, it was a waste of my time. Guys, we have to, as leaders, we have to avoid that space. That's why I did my summit. And I brought experts in who are practitioners. And listen, if you go back and watch, of everything I've done since I've been here, that's got the most views than anything, a 9 to 5 summit. Why? Because it was meeting a need. Okay, so in terms of CEUs and all that and what have you, whatever's required, I guess we got to follow the program. But at the end of the day, let's cut through all the chase, guys, and let's get with what's real.
So to the audience who asked the question, the answer is yes. There are CEUs.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
No,
the answer is yes. I'm sorry. Yeah, the answer is yes.
We wanted to make sure that our questions were heartfelt, in there. But we do appreciate
Roger,
that fact, Pastor.
And so they just didn't work with the term crap, but we did get an answer to the question. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where Pastor Paul went. He's kind of like me today, man. My internet went out.
He couldn't handle the answer. He couldn't handle the answer. But
yeah.
I do want to say, I think I won't put him on the spot, but someone asked, with beyond Pelk, there's nowhere else to go. But I want to say, no, there's a lot of other places to go.
Lots of places
to get help, to get the help, even in resources. And Pastor Black has been very, very, very generous with his time and energy and thinking to put together resources to help grow churches that they can use the next day. And so, there are others who are doing it, and there are places that are doing it. May not all have Adventists behind their names, but there are places for pastors to be revitalized, to come back and bring back to the community. I shouldn't just say pastors, leaders, because elders can go, local ministry leaders can go and be energized and come back and make a difference in their church.
Yeah, and if I could just add something there, Elder, I've been going to, like most pastors, we've been going to workers' meetings and to pastors' meetings and to PELCs and to, all of these other conventions and stuff, the continuing education stuff. And one of the things that I have that's always kind of been one of those, is that I sit there and there's great youth resources, there's great personal ministry resources, evangelism resources, and Sabbath school resources, and resources for clerks and treasurers that oftentimes we get a lot of as pastors. And we get the bag, you go and register, you get the bag, and by the time your bag is full of stuff that, oh man, you got me getting into trouble now. That stuff will stay in the bag until I need that bag to carry something else in to go on some other trip or something. And I sit there and I think to myself, when I'm sitting in some of these workshops, man, this is great information. I wish my AY leader was here. Man, this is great information, but I wish my leaders, my elders were here. I wish my Sabbath school superintendent was here, because all of this information that I'm getting as the pastor, I ain't doing nothing with this stuff. I'm not the AY. I'm not the Sabbath school superintendent. I can't do this work, nor do I have the facility or the time, whatever, to convey it all to these individual folks. So doing something like you did with your summit is huge. It's essentially saying we're taking all of that information and providing an opportunity, or providing a context in which to be able to do that for them. So I salute you on that. That's just a phenomenal idea, and I look forward to stealing some of that from learning. Look forward to learning more from you on how to implement that in my own context. So thank you so much for sharing that.
And if I, if,
All
if I
right.
can add one more thing, if I can add one more thing about that, the next summit we're going to do is cross training. You mentioned about AY and some of these ministries. One of the things I'm discovering is that there's not. I talked about making duplicates of ourselves, but also cross training.
Mm-hmm.
Cross training. Because what happens is everybody in the church needs to know how to do youth ministry. Everybody in the church, especially your leadership team, they need to know how to do children's ministry. All of us need to know how to do women's ministry. I just got my board to vote this past Tuesday night to establish a men's ministry for the church. I'm going to be the person heading. I have a burden there, right? But again, I'm not going to be by myself, because again, I want the whole church to understand what it means to have a viable men's ministry. And so we need to learn how to cross train. And I think my next summit is going to be going down ministry after ministry, what it takes, what's the cutting edge, what are the best practices, okay, and how does everybody fit into that? Okay, so I would if I don't say anything else, I would recommend every church at least once a year to have a 9 to 5 summit. I mean, it was well organized. I mean, this is what I've done for years, so it was easy for me. But I got the template. As a matter of fact, I plan to publish my revitalization curriculum in terms of what I'm doing step by step. But again, having a guide does make it a little bit easier. And then throughout the year, we'll take once a quarter, maybe a 2-hour period after church, once a quarter, and follow up from the summit. Okay, so we're following up. But I would recommend every church do some kind of summit leadership.
Well, awesome.
And just to be clear, I want to make sure that everybody, this was not just for leaders. This was for the entire church, this 9 to 5.
It was the congregation. The congregation. Yeah.
Visitors, guests, anybody, church.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Love it.
Great stuff.
So Marilyn pointed out that some churches may be opposed to that type of. Did you have any pushback, or were they in such? I went to a church that they were glad to do anything. Did you find that the church had to be in that space before, or was there any pushback as to, Pastor, we shouldn't do this during the 11 o'clock hour?
When you're on when you're on life support.
I need you to say that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I need you to say that.
When you're on life support, or I don't want a blood transfusion, or I don't want an IV, or I don't want DNR. You know, I don't want what? Okay, and so no, not one. I honestly, God bless Bethany, not one single word in terms of pushback. Not one.
Yeah.
Not one. Not one. I'm at a good church, man. I got some good people.
Come on,
good stuff. Shout out to Bethany. All right.
Yes, sir.
Good.
So as we begin to land this plane, we didn't even take a break because it was so good. Um, um, the question I have now is, outside of, you brought a lot to the church. I may be pastoring in another part of this country, in another state, another city. What organizations are there for to help me kind of catch the vision of what you're having? Or maybe I do have that vision, but I just don't know where to start as a leader. I'm not even just going to say the pastor. I'm saying as a leader. Uh, where can I turn?
You know, what I've always done, and Roger, it's interesting you asked the question because you're a part of this. Um, Sometimes we can't wait for the organization to provide the platform for us to make that happen. And I'm saying this because Roger is a part of it. I created a group of 6. I chose 6 leaders. And we have a chat line.
I think I'm
We
feeling
share,
some kind of way right about now. All right, go
we
ahead. I'm
share,
sorry.
we, 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 we share ideas. We share our sorrows. When something is funny, man, the day is interesting. Okay. Um, Roger would tell you it's life. And it's been a blessing for me. If I have a question, I put it out to that group, and man, we flesh it all the way out. Someone lost a loved one, we were all there for that person. And so, what I would say is create a space of, if you don't have this book, it's called One Word by One Word That Will Change Your Life. It's on Amazon, a little cheap red book by Britton Page and I forget the other guy's name. One Word That Will Change Your Life. I've been doing it for the last 6 years. I choose one word every year, and there's 6 levels to the one word, and it guides your life for the whole spiritual, family, finance, all that, and so forth. Uh, the year I put the 6 together, my one word for that year was space. And
Mm,
I realized there were some people in my space I needed to clear. And I
okay.
needed to recreate my space. And I chose 6 people to place in my leadership sort of space to make sure that it's a good place for me. And that helps me as far as personal growth, professional growth, camaraderie. It's been, Roger, am I lying? It's a
No.
it's a blessing for, and it didn't intend on being that. And half of everybody didn't even know each other.
Hmm. Hmm.
But we are a family. So what I'm saying is be proactive in putting together something and surrounding yourself with something that works for you. There's no cookie cutter approach in terms of how you do it. The organization may not have it in place, but locally find out, what's happening locally, who you can network with. The state representative, somehow the guy's taking a liking to me. He's coming to my church. He was at the breakfast last Sabbath, just sitting down eating himself to death, right? And he's taking. I'm flipping pancakes on a grill before I preach Sabbath morning, right? And we do that every first and Thursday. And he's just fascinated by that. But now I'm in his network. He's in my network. But create it, folk. Don't sit back and just wait for it to happen because it may not be there. But I'm just giving you an example of what's been a blessing for me because it wasn't there for me. Okay. And by doing that, it has grown me and provided me with a great space.
Awesome.
Wow. Listen, I just bought it on Amazon. I know I shouldn't have broke the Sabbath, but One Word That Will Change Your Life uh, by John Gordon.
You did do good on the Sabbath. Do good on the Sabbath. You did good on the
Listen,
Sabbath.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Man, if James Black is telling you to buy a book, you better buy the book.
Hey Roger, if
And
I
it's
can
not even
flip
his book.
pancakes,
That's the
if
thing.
I can flip pancakes on Sabbath morning, you can buy a book on Amazon.
I'm
Listen,
gonna
listen.
hold that other line for the good Adventists out there. No, you can buy it after. It's still gonna be there after sunset. We're gonna honor the Sabbath, y'all. We're gonna do
Amen.
that. Amen. Let the church
Listen,
say
I, I
amen.
I was driving I was just a side note on that. I was driving the other day and I'm listening to a book called Redeeming Your Time. And the guy says, if you can do it in 2 minutes, do it now. Don't wait. So I could have done it in 2 minutes. I did it. So I can move on. It's taken out of I don't have to go back to it right now. And that's another resource
You
there.
didn't even
Thanks,
have to
Pastor
tell
Mike.
us, right?
But I just want you to know,
Mercy.
I think that is key because I'll be honest with you, coming through as a pastor, learning, you get a lot of book knowledge. You get a lot of, hey, do it this way, try this, try that. But some practical stuff is hard, and sometimes you feel burnt out because you're constantly going. But to hear from someone like yourself, Pastor Black, who has done the gamut, you've kind of had some free time talking to the Lord because he had to stop you based on our conversation, and for you to come back now revitalized and ready and sharing. I'm excited about what you're sharing tonight. So that was one of the reasons why I made sure that I jumped on here to get this. But as you were sharing, although you're saying that we ought to do it ourselves. What are some of the other things that what impact you most to this point to say yes to come back into leadership at the local church?
Honestly, I really wasn't retired. I really didn't retire, to be truthful. I was looking for a transition.
Mm.
It wasn't certain what that was going to look like, and it was easy for me to go through the process of retirement to reflect. I also didn't realize how much I needed to heal emotionally,
Mm,
because as pastors, we're all sick.
mm,
We're sick. We're wounded. We have battle wounds. As church members, we're sick. We're wounded, and we have wounds, and we rarely take time to heal. So what I felt that my wife and I did, we took 2 years to heal physically, emotionally, spiritually, our marriage, our money, our children. We were on a, when I bought the motorhome that I'm living in now, thank God I got it. We went cross country on that healing tour. Man, that was a blessing. So we took time to
Wow.
heal. And when people ask me where does the energy come from now, well, I feel
Yeah.
well. I'm well. You know, that doesn't
Yeah.
mean perfect, but I'm well. Okay, I'm well, and we can talk about that later. But the energy comes from I took time to heal.
mm,
Um, I'm not tired yet, and so I thank God for the energy. I didn't always have the energy given the health crisis I've had,
Mm-hmm.
and so when I came back, it was more or less I needed that break, and I didn't see this coming. Honestly, I was trying. But you know, I was about to buy the 400-acre farm, and
mm-hmm.
that was another story. We almost that's another story. We almost did that, and God blocked it at the last minute. We had already paid for the inspection and had put the earnest money up on a 400-acre farm in Georgia, and I had 15 projects that we were going to do with the community and so forth, and it just stopped. God stopped it, right? But my point is, I think if I had not taken the time to heal, I don't know what my journey would have been. So that's what kind of got me back, is that I was clearing my thinking. I am excited about this right now. I don't know how long it's going to last, to be honest with you. People don't know it. I'm still young. I'm 64. I'll be 65 October the 1st. And, but I don't plan to work forever. I'm not going to kill my. See, here's the quotation. Here's an original quotation from James Black. They tell us that we need to finish the work, but in many instances, the work is finishing us.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Mercy. Come on,
Mercy.
preacher.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I had the bone marrow transplant. It was a ministry lifestyle that almost killed me.
Wow.
Wow.
That's why I had the stroke. It was a ministry lifestyle that almost took me out.
Mercy.
That's not happening anymore by God's grace. So I'm wiser, And so, Roger, when I come back to the table, I'm more humble as well because I'm grateful. But just to
mm.
answer your question, that's how that journey took place that got me back.
Yeah.
Hey, can I
Awesome.
say one more thing? Can I say one more thing about the resource, whether you're sure or not? One of my new releases, the book I wrote on leadership. I want to make a point here because you never see this in many leadership books. So one of my resources, and I'll give you all some complimentary copies to give to some of your listeners, and you can figure out later how you're going to do it. But one of my
Yeah.
latest resources, the Thriving Ministry Leader. The subtitle is How to Create and Sustain a Win-Win Ministry. And in my book, I put everything I have everything in there that I know about leadership. But here's the thing that we often miss. Here's the thing that you don't see in a lot of leadership books. I don't just have my wins in there. I also have my losses in there.
Yeah.
And what I learned from the losses. When there was a fatality at summer camp and I was a departmental leader and they wanted to can me and how God brought me through that and how I survived that. And 3 years later, I became the leader of all the camps in North America.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned from that. So I have a whole lot of what didn't work well, where I lost, literally lost, and how God turned it around and I learned something from it. There's some success stories in there as well, but there's a whole lot of losses and lessons from those losses that's in this leadership book. And I feel it's one of my best, and I'm grateful for it. And I will give some complimentary copies to you guys to give later on to some of your listeners,
Awesome.
however you choose to. So we'll provide that for you.
Awesome.
That's phenomenal. Listen, Elder, we're going to show just a couple more resources that you have before we get out of here. If you would just tell us just a little bit about this next one that we're going to put up here. Tell us about this one, God's Got a Plan and You're It.
Yeah. My autobiography on my life is called God's Got a Plan and I'm in it. I didn't give that one to you. God's Got a Plan and I'm in it. The subtitle is The Incredible Journey of an Ordinary Man. So I talk about where God found me in Savannah to take me to leadership in D.C. When I wrote that, people were like, well, what about my plan? And so I wrote this plan for others. God's got a plan and you're it. And in this, I'm talking about how to use your influence as leverage, your spiritual influence as leverage. And God has blessed us. I've done a lot of leadership around the world, just helping people discover their path with this particular book. So that's what it's all about. I wrote it years ago. So the section on social media, there is no MySpace anymore. So forgive that part. The book has been around for a minute. The last one here is a life-saving conversation with God. This book was very emotional for me because when I had the bone marrow transplant in 2016, some of you will remember I was posting my prayers, my conversation with God. I was posting them on Facebook every day for 40 days while I was in the hospital. Someone suggested, why don't you take those prayers and put them in a book? I hadn't. That's what I did, and these are the 40 prayers. This is incredible. I mean, you get some Kleenex while you're reading it because you saw how intimate God and I got. My favorite chapter in here is, Lord, forgive me for the doubt. When I was having the transplant, one day I thought I wasn't going to make it because I got a fever. And when you have a transplant, bone marrow, fevers are not good. I didn't think I was going to make it, and I wouldn't go to sleep for 2 days. And that messed my body up, and I was getting sick, more sick and more sick. And I wouldn't go to sleep one night because I thought I wasn't going to wake up the next morning.
Wow.
And somehow I fell asleep. I woke up the next morning, and when I woke up, my prayer that day was, Lord, forgive me for the doubt.
Mercy. Mercy.
And
Mercy.
And last but not least, I'm working on this. I'm hoping to release this year. I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this. The Search for Church. Has anyone seen her? She was just here a minute ago. Okay. And I'm not gonna comment on that one right now, but that I'm hoping this will be my 2024 release.
All right. Well, listen, if you are just joining us this evening, we are sorry that you missed a great conversation tonight with Pastor James Black.
Yes.
We've gone just a little beyond our normal time this evening, but we thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. If you're watching live or if you're watching on the replay, if you are watching on the replay, we want to invite you to drop a comment in the chat. If there are any questions that you have, any comments that you have, don't just watch us on a replay and not let us know that you joined us. Those of you that have joined us as we exit, if you're just joining us, we want to know where you're watching from. So go ahead and drop that in the chat as well. Roger, very quickly, if someone wants to catch up on any of the past PRT episodes or wants to go and find this one from the beginning, if they're just joining us, how do they do that?
It's very simple. You just go to the website, theprt.live, and you'll get not just this episode, but every single episode that we have done on Pastors Roundtable from season 1 to season 9. You'll get every episode, and you will not miss a conversation if you stay up with the PRT.live. And if you wanna support the Pastors Roundtable, we are not saying you have to, but if you are enjoying what you're getting, the other guest we were having, I heard him say this very well. The gospel is free, but ministry costs. But if you would like to support Pastors Roundtable, at the bottom of the PRT.live website page, you can go to the support page and you can share what God has placed in your heart in supporting the Pastors Roundtable. We are
Can
just
they do that on
thankful.
Sabbath?
Yeah, they can do that on Sabbath. That's doing good on the Sabbath. We just are so thankful for the opportunity that God has blessed us with. And Pastor Black, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
If it's just me directly, Pastor JB Senior, JBSR at gmail.com.
All right. JBSR.
Pastor JB at gmail.com.
Yep.
Yep. And we are going to place some information there in the show notes under this episode that will also have that information for you. And so, again, we are just so thankful. Unfortunately, our co-host, Dr. Henry, is having some technical issues. And so he could not stay with us at this time. But Pastor Black, we just want to say thank you. The conversation was relevant, it was resourced, and it was real. And we just want you to know that you just epitomized Pastors Roundtable tonight in sharing about post-pandemic leadership.
Good stuff.
So much for the opportunity.
Well, listen, for all of our alumni, we always want to make sure that you know that you always have an open invitation to come back and join us here at the PRT. We look forward to having some more in-depth conversations that are relevant, resourced, and real. Roger, I think that we can go ahead and make this exit, man.
All right. To those who have joined us
next week, what are we doing? Yeah. Listen, if we're doing part 2s, what's our part 2 next week? I don't have my stuff in front of me. What is this?
I do not have mine in front of me either.
All right. Well, we are doing a part 2 on next week. So make sure that you come on back and join us next week. Same time, same place, Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern.
To our viewers, thank you for joining us tonight. I want to just give a nice shout out to my mother, Shaki Patrick, who is watching from Trinidad. And she is always excited. You always want to know when is Pastors Roundtable. So we want to say happy Sabbath to Mom and to all of you who are here celebrating with us today about post-pandemic leadership. Again, Pastor Black, thank you. On behalf of my co-host, Pastor Paul and Dr. Henry, and myself, thank you for joining us in making Pastors Roundtable relevant,
resourced, and Dion is back. We're going to say, and real. All right. Good night, everybody. Pastor Black, you stay put for just a quick second.
Yeah, don't leave, Pastor.
Good night, everybody.